Help me welcome Paul Gamble. A life story of an expert, a life story of an expert, Paul Gamble.
Thank you very much. Tonight we have a special guest with us. My guest, Delmar MacLean, a well-spoken, well-educated young man. He's well acquainted with different parts of Canada. And most importantly, he's an expert at dealing with people and counseling. So please help me welcome my guest, Delmar MacLean. How's it going, Delmar? How's it going? Have a seat. Get comfy.
Thank you.
Let's get into this. Delmar.
Yes.
Is that a common name?
It's not very common. There are a few other Delmars. I actually have Googled the name Delmar, and I've come across a few others. In my case, it was simply a name that my mother put together using, based on her friend Della and my aunt Margaret. So that was interesting. I think she was expecting a lady, and something came along as perhaps a surprise.
That's a good name. It's a good story. I'm going to remember that from now on. Sure. You're not originally from Barrie, is that correct?
No, I'm not. I'm originally from Prince Edward Island.
Prince Edward Island.
Yes.
And what's the pace of life out in Prince Edward Island? Are people bustling, or is it a little bit?
I would say it's probably a little slower than Barrie. Although I think that in recent years it has picked up given the prevalence of social media. So whether you're living here in Barrie or you're in Charlottetown, you're obviously glued to your iPhone. I'm not, simply because I'm a bit of a hesitant when it comes to some of this technology. I'm a little bit old-fashioned, but otherwise I think the gap between pace is decreasing.
Okay. Bud the Spud from the Big Bread Mud. Is that your favorite song? You don't have to answer.
Not really. No,
Okay.
I'm more of a Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin. Good choice in music. So we're going to just shift the gears here a little bit. You went to the University of Prince Edward Island. Is that correct?
Yes.
Whenabouts did you do that?
I did my undergraduate degree, an honors Bachelor of Arts degree with a double major in psychology and world religions. Initially, I couldn't decide which one I enjoyed more, so I thought, well, perhaps I'll stay on and do a major in both.
Oh, excellent. Actually, I love psychology.
Yes,
Mostly pop psychology. Was psychology a passion for you as well?
Yes. I was actually inspired by a friend of mine. As you may or may not know, I do have some vision loss, and I had a friend of mine who was actually totally blind, and he went back to school. He was somewhat older than me, but he was a mentor, and he got me interested in the idea of university. He was actually studying psychology and social work, so I thought that would be an interesting field for me, and that inspired me to continue on in that direction.
In world religions? You said that was your other major?
Yes, world religions. I ended up taking a few elective courses in world religions, and
Why? What was the inspiration to?
interestingly enough, I grew up somewhat in the church, both in the Baptist Church and the United Traditions. I also began to, you'll laugh at this, but I began to watch a lot of shows on television that were religious themed, investigations on biblical archaeology or scriptures, and that really, Mysteries of the Bible was a show I used to watch on A&E, and I really enjoyed that, and that got me interested in studying religion.
Now, did you study other religions? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism.
So last month, this last month, we've seen terrorism, the terrorist attacks in Paris.
Right.
We've heard some grumblings about Syrian refugees for whatever reason. In your honest opinion, if you think somebody such as majored in psychology and world religions, do you think we'd be a more tolerant society? Do you think we would?
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I think for me it has allowed me to become more tolerant, because I actually have studied Islam, and I understand what their beliefs are. I think the issue is people really don't understand what the beliefs are of specific traditions, and then they make generalizations. So I understand that ISIS, I mean, they're extremists. They don't represent day-to-day traditional Islam, and I think
There's a hidden agenda, or
well, it's like in Christianity, you do have fundamentalists that that picket abortion clinics, or that Now, I'm not saying that a person can't be shouldn't be pro-life, but obviously most of us aren't going to go out and bomb an abortion clinic, but maybe extremists do, right? So I think it's a similar paradigm there.
Okay, interesting. Then after Prince Edward Island University, you got your master's where?
I did a master's degree in social work from the university, from Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo.
So you relocated. You were on the Big Red Mud, and then you went to Waterloo. Was that a huge shift for you?
It was. I was initially terrified. I mean, it's a big change for a young guy. My friend and I and his father actually packed all my possessions in their, I think it was their minivan, and we took off on the road from Charlottetown, and 17 hours later we landed at relatives of his in Thornhill, Ontario.
It was an awesome road trip, high fives, and a lot of shenanigans?
Well, it was tiring because my friend and his father liked to drive with very limited stopping. So we would occasionally stop 2 minutes at a Tim Hortons, and it was right back on the road. So it was interesting. It was a growing experience for me.
At least they stopped. There was no milk jugs or anything like that. So, master's in social work. What would that entail? Would you be wearing a lab coat as part of your homework, or what's?
No, the master's degree in social work, it involves, of course, your theoretical courses in the area of clinical counseling practice with individuals, families, and groups in general. There are courses in individual therapeutic models as well as family therapy. And then there are internships, clinical internships, where you're placed in a clinic, you work with a supervisor. I remember my first supervisor saying, here are your cases, plunking a stack of client files on my desk and saying, go to it. I said, but I really haven't done any counseling. And he said, well, you'll learn.
Well, learn by fire.
Yes.
So now what do you do? What would you say?
Now, in my current role, I'm a registered social worker with the Ontario College, and I work for the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, for the Simcoe-Muskoka region here, office in Barrie. I cover actually all of Central Ontario. I'm the Specialist Service Coordination for Central Ontario region. So I do both assessment interviews to look at clients' challenges who are facing vision loss, talking to them about specific services, making referrals for them to fellow vision rehabilitation specialists, and also monitoring their progress through the various the episode of services. So I do case management as well.
Okay, one thing I've always noticed about you is you have a nice, very calm, very calm and soothing voice. It's not erratic. Me, I tend to sometimes I'll rattle people. Do you think that helps when you're dealing with clients? Like, what's the typical client, and how do you?
Well, I think I've been told by clients that they do find me very easy to deal with, that I'm very calm, and it helps them to feel relaxed. I think it's important to make your client feel relaxed and establish that rapport, because I think that's really 90% of what you do when you establish a rapport with someone, so that they have that sense that you're at least to some degree understanding how they're feeling about a situation. They will work with you, and then you can work together, helping them to come towards solutions. Really, clients have strengths in themselves. People are experts on their own lives. We just sometimes need a sounding board. We need someone to help us work toward that positive direction.
Have you ever dealt with somebody that was so difficult that you were shaking your head going, oh my goodness, how am I going to deal with this?
I think for me, probably the most challenging clients I've worked with, I remember working with a client before my CNIB time, who in a clinical setting who was experiencing severe depression. And that's very challenging because depression, you have a number of cognitive, what we call cognitive distortions, where no matter what anybody says, your brain creates a negative perspective. For example, you could go out, walk down Dunlop Street and meet 10 people who say, "Good morning, isn't life great? You look very nice today." And you'll have that one person who is grumpy and makes a negative comment about you.
So
who do you think they'll remember? The negative comment. And they'll build that up.
So sometimes you try to do the best you can, but for some people...
Yes, the realization, I think, as you grow as a social worker, is that you can't always help everyone, and you don't always immediately see the fruits of your labor. Perhaps sometimes a suggestion that you make, a person may not act on that till 10 years later, but sometimes you're just planting that seed. You do what you can. You provide the best environment, therapeutic environment for them to grow, and you sometimes have to hope for the best. It's like anything where we're just human.
I hear you. Well, thank you very much. I see the floor manager's waving me off, so we'll have to do a part 2 sometime.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much. Delmar MacLean, everybody.